Jake Morrison stood at the large window of the Galactic Council building and watched the morning light shine on the alien city below. The tall buildings reached up toward the sky like metal fingers. Strange vehicles floated between them carrying beings from dozens of different worlds. 3 years ago, this sight had filled him with wonder. Today, it made his stomach feel sick. The human ambassador turned away from the window and walked to his desk. On the screen were the results from yesterday's vote. The numbers glowed red like an angry wound. Sanctions against human colonies, approved. Restrictions on human trade ships, approved. Removal of humans from the Joint Defense Committee, approved. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He had been fighting these battles for months now, and each time he lost more ground. The other council members looked at him with cold eyes when he spoke. They whispered among themselves when they thought he could not hear. The words were always the same. Humans were too aggressive. Humans expanded too fast. Humans brought chaos wherever they went. It had not always been this way. When humans first joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago, things were different. The alien races had welcomed them with open arms. They were curious about human technology and human ways of thinking. They asked for help with problems their own scientists could not solve, but success bred fear. As human colonies grew stronger and human ships traveled further, the other races began to worry. They said humans took too many risks. They said humans asked too many questions. They said humans changed things too quickly. Jake picked up his communication device and called Captain Lisa Bennett. Her face appeared on the screen, looking tired and frustrated. Behind her, he could see the bridge of her ship, the UCS Liberty. Red warning lights blinked in the background. "Jake, thank God you called," Lisa said. "I just got new orders from the Council. They want my entire fleet to pull back from the Outer Rim sectors. All of them." Jake felt his heart sink. "When?" "Immediately. They say we're no longer needed for patrol duties." Lisa's voice was bitter. "Do you know what happened here yesterday? 3 merchant ships were attacked by pirates in the Kepler system. 3 ships full of families and medical supplies. We could have prevented it if we'd been allowed to maintain our normal patrol routes." "I know," Jake said quietly. "I tried to argue against the withdrawal order in yesterday's session. Council member Vexahan said human military presence was destabilizing to the region." Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Destabilizing? We've been keeping the peace out here for 5 years. Pirate attacks dropped by 70% after we started regular patrols. Trade increased. Settlements grew, but somehow we're the problem." Jake had heard the same complaints in the council chambers. The Zolorian representative claimed human ships were too heavily armed. The Corvan delegate said human tactics were too aggressive. They all seemed to forget that pirates only understood one kind of language, and it was not the language of diplomacy. "What? About the research station?" Jake asked. Lisa's expression darkened. "That's another problem. Dr. Alan Carter contacted me this morning. They've cut off his access to the main database. All his research on quantum communication is locked away. They gave his lab to some Thraxian scientists who don't know the first thing about the project." Jake closed his eyes. The quantum communication project was close to a breakthrough that could change everything. Instant communication across the galaxy would revolutionize trade, diplomacy, and emergency response. Alan had been working on it for 3 years, building on research that only humans truly understood. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Maria Santos told me they're reassigning the entire human research team. Apparently, our aggressive approach to scientific discovery is not suitable for cooperative research." The aggressive approach. Jake had heard that phrase 100 times in the last 6 months. It seemed to be the answer to everything humans did. Human doctors saved lives too aggressively. Human engineers solved problems too aggressively. Human traders negotiated too aggressively. Jake's communication device buzzed with another call. Dr. Nancy. Lee's face appeared alongside Lisa's. Nancy worked at the medical center on Corvin Prime, where she had spent 4 years developing treatments for diseases that affected multiple alien species. Jake, I need to talk to you, Nancy said. Her voice was strained. They're shutting down my research division. All the human medical staff are being reassigned to less sensitive positions. What about your work on the Zephyrian plague? Jake asked. Nancy had successfully treated an outbreak that could have killed millions of Zephyruses. Just 6 months ago. They say Corvan doctors can handle it from now on? But Jake, they don't understand the treatment process. The cure isn't just a simple medicine. It requires precise timing and specific environmental conditions that I spent years figuring out. If another outbreak happens— Nancy did not finish the sentence, but Jake understood. Millions could die because the council decided human methods were too aggressive after ending the calls. Jake sat alone in his office and thought about the pattern he was seeing. Everywhere humans had made contributions to galactic society, they were being pushed out. The official reasons were always the same: too aggressive, too different, too destabilizing, but Jake suspected the real reason was simpler and uglier. The other races were afraid. Not of human weapons or human expansion, but of human competence. Humans solved problems that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. They brought new ideas and new ways of thinking. They changed things, and change was frightening, especially to civilizations that had remained the same for thousands of years. Jake opened his secure communication channel and sent a coded message. To Earth, the message was simple: Council relations deteriorating rapidly. Recommend implementation of contingency plans. Within hours, he received a response from General Rick Hayes. Plans already in motion. Prepare for Phase 1. Jake looked out the window again at the alien city. Soon, this would no longer be his home. Soon, humans would no longer be welcome here. But maybe that was for the best. Maybe it was time for humanity to find its own path among the stars. The galaxy would learn soon enough what it meant to lose the most innovative and determined species it ever known. But by then, it would be too late to change their minds. The humans were preparing to leave, and they would do it quietly, with dignity, and with all their knowledge and skills intact. The council wanted them gone, and they would get their wish. They just had no idea what they were about to lose. General Rick Hayes stood in the underground command center on Luna Base, watching dozens of screens that showed human activities across the galaxy. Each screen told the same story. Humans were moving, packing, and preparing. But they were doing it so quietly that no one else noticed. Rick had been planning Operation Quiet Dawn for 2 years. He knew this day would come. The signs had been clear for months. The Galactic Council was turning against humanity. And when they finally decided to push humans out, Rick wanted to be ready. The operation was massive but invisible. Every human colony, every research station, every trade post was part of the plan. They would leave nothing behind that could help the aliens who wanted them gone. On screen 7, engineer Sophie Clark was leading her team through the Kepler mining station. Sophie had built that station with her own hands 5 years ago. She knew every pipe, every wire, every computer system. Now she was taking it all apart. "Remember, we take everything that matters," Sophie told her team over the radio. "And what we cannot take, we make sure nobody else can use." Sophie's team moved through the station like experts. They removed the quantum processors that made the mining equipment work. They took out the navigation computers that help ships find the richest asteroid fields. They even removed the water recycling systems that kept the station livable. The Corvan workers who shared the station watched with confusion. They thought Sophie's team was doing routine maintenance. They had no idea they were watching their livelihood disappear piece by piece. In the medical bay, Sophie opened the main computer that controlled the station's life support. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. She was not destroying anything. She was just changing the access codes. Soon, only humans would know how to operate the systems that kept the station running. The Corvans would figure that out eventually. But by then it would be too late. On screen 12, Commander Bill Parker was coordinating the withdrawal of human medical staff from alien worlds. Bill had served in the military for 20 years. But this was the hardest mission he had ever led. Dr. Nancy Lee was packing her research from the Corven Medical Center. 4 years of work went into sealed containers: the cure for Zephyrian plague, the treatment for Thraxian bone disease, the vaccine for the virus that had killed thousands of hegemony civilians last year. "Nancy, are you sure about this?" asked Dr. Veltar, her Corven colleague. "Your research could save millions of lives." Nancy looked up from her packing. Her face was sad but determined. "My research has already saved millions of lives. But your people have made it clear that human medical practices are too aggressive for galactic standards. I am sure you will find better solutions." Dr. Veltar shifted nervously. "But the encryption codes for your database ... will be transferred to Earth Medical Archives," Nancy finished. "For the safety and security of the research, of course." Nancy did not mention that the encryption used human mathematical concepts that would take alien cryptographers decades to break. By the time they cracked the codes, they would have already learned to live without human medicine. On screen 15, Captain Lisa Bennett was overseeing the evacuation of Defense Station Alpha. The station guarded the main trade route between the core worlds and the Outer Rim. For 6 years, human ships had used this base to launch patrols that kept pirates away from merchant vessels. Lisa watched her crew remove the sensor arrays that could detect cloaked ships. They took the communication systems that coordinated fleet movements across 3 sectors. They even removed the tactical computers that predicted pirate attack patterns. "Captain," said Lieutenant Dan Foster, "the Zalorian Defense Force wants to take over the station next week. Should we brief them on the security protocols?" Lisa smiled coldly. "The security protocols are classified human military secrets, Lieutenant. I am sure they will develop their own methods." What Lisa did not say was that those protocols were based on 20 years of fighting pirates in human space. The Zalorians had never faced real piracy before humans started protecting the trade routes. They had no idea what they were about to face. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Human colonists packed their belongings and prepared to leave worlds they had called home for decades. They took their farming equipment, their manufacturing tools, their power generators. They took the knowledge that had made barren worlds bloom with life. On Centauri 7, farmer Joe Wilson looked at the fields he had spent 10 years creating. The soil had been poisoned when he arrived. Nothing could grow in the toxic dirt that covered most of the planet. But Joe had brought Earth bacteria that slowly cleaned the soil. He had developed new plant strains that could survive in the harsh climate. Now, those fields fed 3 million Thraxian colonists. But the bacteria needed constant care, and the plants required specific fertilizers that only Joe knew how to make. When he left, the fields would return to poisonous desert within 2 growing seasons. Joe loaded his equipment onto the transport ship. The Thraxians watching him thought he was just moving to a different farm. They had no idea they were watching. Their food supply disappeared. In the Deep Space Research Facility near Vega, Dr. Alan Carter was finishing his work on the quantum communication project. 3 years of research were finally bearing fruit. The equations were solved. The hardware was designed. The prototype was almost ready for testing. Alan looked at his life's work displayed on the computer screens around him. Instant communication across the galaxy would change everything. Ships in distress could call for help immediately. Trade negotiations could happen in real time. Families separated by light years could talk to each other every day. It was beautiful. It was revolutionary. And the Galactic Council had decided they did not want humans involved in building it. Alan began typing commands into his computer. One by one, the research files disappeared into encrypted storage. The hardware designs vanished into secured databases. The prototype itself was disassembled and packed for shipment to human space. When he was finished, the laboratory looked the same as always. But the knowledge that could have connected the galaxy was gone. The Thraxian scientists who would replace him would find empty computers and broken equipment. They could try to rebuild the research, but they were starting from decades behind. Where Alan had begun, General Hayes watched it all from his command center. Operation Quiet Dawn was proceeding perfectly. Across the galaxy, humans were packing up their lives and taking their knowledge with them. They were doing it calmly, efficiently, and with complete secrecy. The aliens thought they were getting rid of a troublesome species. They had no idea they were watching their civilization's foundation being quietly removed. Piece by piece, system by system, world by world. Soon the galaxy would understand what they had lost. But by then, the humans would be gone, and their secrets would be gone with them. The exodus was about to begin. Jake Morrison walked into the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 47 different species. They sat in their curved seats, talking quietly among themselves. Most of them looked pleased. Today was the day they had been waiting for. Jake took his place at the human delegation podium. The chamber grew quiet as all eyes turned to him. He had given many speeches in this room over the past 3 years. He had argued for human rights. He had defended human actions. He had tried to build bridges between his people and the galaxy. Today, he would do none of those things. Council leader Zektar stood up at the central platform. The tall hegemony official looked down at Jake with cold satisfaction. Ambassador Morrison, the Council has reached its final decision regarding human membership. The vote was unanimous. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. A murmur of approval went through the chamber. Jake could see the relief on their faces. Finally, the troublesome humans would be gone. Jake stood slowly and activated his microphone. His voice was calm and clear as it echoed through the chamber. Council Leader Zektar, distinguished representatives, I have heard your decision. The human race accepts your judgment without protest or appeal. Several council members looked surprised. They had expected anger. They had prepared for arguments and threats. Jake's quiet acceptance caught them off guard. Furthermore, Jake continued, humanity respects your sovereignty and your right to determine the future of this galaxy. Therefore, we will remove ourselves from council space entirely. Every human colony, every human ship, every human citizen will withdraw beyond the galactic rim within 90 standard days. Now the surprise was complete. Council member Vexahan leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Morrison, there is no need for such extreme measures. We simply require humanity to accept a more limited role in galactic affairs. Jake smiled sadly. With respect, Council member Vexahan, you have made your feelings about human participation very clear. We will not burden you with our presence any longer. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings he had once considered friends. In 3 months, there will be no humans in council space. You will have exactly what you wanted, peace without human interference. The chamber erupted in confused whispers. This was not what they had planned. They wanted humans to be junior partners, not to disappear completely. Jake raised his hand for silence. I would like to thank the Council for the privilege of representing humanity these past years. It has been an honor to serve. I wish you all success in your future endeavors. He gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the chamber filled with urgent voices as council members realized they might have pushed too hard. Council leader Zektar called after him. Ambassador Morrison, perhaps we should discuss this further. Jake paused at the door and turned back. There is nothing left to discuss. Good day and goodbye. Within hours of Jake's speech, the exodus began. At Luna Base, General Rick Hayes gave the signal that activated Operation Quiet Dawn across the entire galaxy. Every human settlement received the same message. Pack everything, leave nothing. We go home. Captain Lisa Bennett stood on the bridge of the UCS Liberty, watching the greatest migration in human history unfold on her screens. Hundreds of colony ships emerged from hiding places throughout council space. They had been secretly gathering for weeks, waiting for this moment. The ships came from mining worlds where humans had carved cities from solid rock. They came from agricultural planets where human farmers had turned deserts into gardens. They came from research stations where human scientists had unlocked the secrets of alien biology. Each ship carried not just people, but everything humans had built. manufacturing equipment that could produce materials unknown to alien science, medical devices that could cure diseases the aliens thought incurable, computers that ran on programming languages the aliens could not read. "Captain, we have 347 ships in our convoy," reported Lieutenant Dan Foster. "All loaded and ready for departure," Lisa nodded. "Signal the fleet. We depart for the Rim territories in 1 hour. On Kepler Station, engineer?" Sophie Clark watched her Corvin colleagues try to operate the mining equipment she had disconnected the day before. The massive extractors sat silent and dark. The processing plants had shut down completely. "Sophie, what happened to the quantum processors?" asked Foreman Krelvek. "The entire extraction system is offline." Sophie picked up her bags and headed for the transport shuttle. "I am afraid that is no longer my concern, Foreman. You will need to find your own solutions now." Krelvek followed her desperately. "But you cannot just leave. This station provides raw materials for 12 different systems. Millions of beings depend on our output." Sophie paused at the shuttle door. "Then I suggest you learn to operate the equipment quickly, or find someone else who can." As her shuttle pulled away from the station, Sophie watched through the window. As Corvin technicians swarmed over the silent machinery, they would figure out eventually that the equipment needed constant adjustment and calibration that only Sophie knew how to perform. But by then, their production quotas would be months behind schedule. On the medical station orbiting Thraxia Prime, Dr. Nancy Lee handed her resignation to Director Velmer. The alien doctor looked at the paper with disbelief. "Nancy, you cannot resign now. We have 17 patients in critical condition who need your specialized treatments." Nancy's expression was gentle but firm. "I am afraid my services are no longer welcome here. The Council has made it clear that human medical practices are too aggressive for galactic standards, but these patients will die without your treatments." Nancy sighed. "Then perhaps the Council should not have expelled the species that developed those treatments." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as humans said goodbye to the lives they had built among the stars. They left behind homes they had loved, friends they had trusted, and work they had believed in, but they took with them something far more valuable. They took their knowledge, their skills, and their determination to build something better. At the Rim territories, massive construction ships were already preparing humanity's new home. Unlike the aliens who had rejected them, humans knew how to start over. They had done it before when they left Earth. They would do it again. The aliens thought they were getting rid of a problem. They had no idea they were watching their own future disappear into the darkness between the stars. In 72 hours, the last human ship would leave Council space. The galaxy would finally have the peace it demanded. Soon, they would discover what that peace would cost them. 3 weeks after the last human ship disappeared beyond the galactic rim, Captain Vexahan of the Zalorian Defense Force stared at his tactical display with growing horror. The screen showed 23 red dots moving through the outer rim. Trade routes, pirates, more pirates than he had ever seen in one place. "Captain, we have another distress call," reported his communications officer. "Merchant vessel Prosperity's Dream is under attack in the Kepler system. They are requesting immediate assistance." Vexahan looked at his small patrol fleet. He had 6 ships to cover an area that Captain Lisa Bennett had protected with 40 vessels. The humans had made it look easy, but now he understood why they needed so many ships. "Helm, set course for Kepler system, maximum speed," he ordered, but even at maximum speed it would take them 4 hours to reach the merchant ship. The pirates would be long gone by then, along with the cargo and probably the crew on the bridge. Communications Officer Telver turned to face him with worry in her large eyes. "Captain, this is the 5th attack this week. The pirates are getting bolder. They are attacking larger convoys now." Vexahan knew she was right. When the humans run these patrols, pirate attacks happen maybe once a month. The criminal ships stayed hidden in asteroid fields and avoided the main trade routes. But now they moved freely, hitting any target they wanted. "Sir," the tactical officer spoke up, "I have been studying the human patrol records. They use something Called predictive positioning to catch pirates before they could attack. Explain, Vexahan said. The humans somehow knew where pirates would strike next. They positioned their ships to intercept attacks before they happened. But I cannot understand. Their system, the mathematics are too complex. Vexahan closed his eyes. The humans had offered to share their anti-piracy methods with the Council many times. The Council had always refused, saying human tactics were too aggressive. Now those tactics seemed like the answer to their prayers. Meanwhile, on Kepler Mining Station, Foreman Krelvek stood in the main control room surrounded by broken machinery and frustrated technicians. The massive ore extractors had been silent for 2 weeks. The quantum processors that powered them were completely dead. Have you figured out the problem yet? He asked Chief Technician Mortal. Mortal shook his head miserably. The quantum processors are designed using mathematics I have never seen before. Engineer Sophie Clark must have used some kind of human mathematical system. Without the original programming codes, I cannot even begin to repair them. Krelvek looked through the window at the mining platforms floating in the asteroid field. 12 systems depended on the raw materials this station produced. Already, he was getting angry messages from factory managers and construction supervisors, demanding to know when shipments would resume. What about the backup systems? He asked. That is the problem, Mortal replied. These are the backup systems. The humans integrated everything so completely that there is no backup for the backup. When the quantum processors failed, everything failed. In the medical bay, Dr. Velmer tried desperately to treat a Thraxian patient suffering from bone disease. The patient had been stable for months under Dr. Nancy Lee's care, but now the disease was spreading rapidly through his body. Doctor, his calcium levels are dropping again, said Nurse Kexford. Should I increase the medication? Dr. Velmer stared at the patient's chart. Nancy had developed a complex treatment that required precise timing of 3 different medications. The note said to adjust the doses based on something called metabolic synchronization, but Velmar had no idea what that meant. Try increasing the primary medication by 10%, he said. Though he had no confidence in the decision. An hour later, the patient's condition had worsened. Velmar realized with growing panic that he was watching someone die from a disease that had been easily treatable just 3 weeks ago. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. On Thraxia Prime, the first plague outbreak began in the crowded lower city. The disease that Dr. Nancy Lee had completely eliminated returned with terrifying speed. Within days, hundreds were infected. Dr. Vextith, the planet's chief medical officer, searched frantically through Nancy's encrypted research files. The cure was there somewhere, locked behind codes that seemed impossible to break. Have our cryptographers made any progress? He asked his assistant. They say the encryption uses human mathematical concepts that do not translate to our systems. It could take years to decode even a small portion of the research. Dr. Vextith watched the infection numbers climb on his display. Years was time they did not have. At the current rate of spread, half the planet would be infected within 2 months. At Nexus Prime Research Station, Dr. Valanesh stared at the quantum communication equations that Dr. Alan Carter had abandoned. For 3 weeks, he had tried to understand the mathematical relationships that seemed to shift and change every time he looked at them. The breakthrough had been so close. The prototype hardware was 90% complete. But without understanding the underlying principles, Valanesh might as well have been trying to build a starship with stone tools. Dr. Valanesh, called his research assistant, I found something in the human computer systems. Valanesh hurried over to look at the screen. What is it? A message from Dr. Carter. He left it in the quantum communication database. The message was simple. The future of galactic communication lies in understanding the harmony between quantum states and biological consciousness. Humans call this intuitive mathematics. Good luck with your research. Valanesh read the message 3 times, becoming more frustrated each time. Intuitive mathematics. Harmony between quantum states and consciousness. It sounded like poetry, not science, but as the weeks passed, He began to suspect that the message contained a crucial clue he was too alien to understand. On the bridge of his command ship, General Thacros of the Hegemony Fleet received reports from across his territory. Without human patrol ships, entire sectors were falling into chaos. The criminals were not just pirates anymore. Smuggling rings were moving illegal weapons between systems. Slave traders were raiding poorly defended colonies. "General," his intelligence officer reported, "we have lost contact with 3 more outposts in the Vega sector. We believe they have been overrun by criminal organizations." Thacros studied the tactical display. Red zones marked areas where his forces could no longer maintain order. They were spreading like an infection across the map. "How many ships would we need to restore security?" he asked. "At least 300 vessels, sir, plus the specialized equipment and training methods the humans used." Thacros laughed bitterly. The humans had been protecting hegemony space with 40 ships. Now he needed 300 just to replace what they had done. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were being called almost daily. Council members who had celebrated the human departure now demanded answers for the growing crisis. Council leader Zektar stood before the assembly with reports of economic collapse, medical emergencies, and security failures. The galaxy that had seemed so stable just a month ago was falling apart. "We need solutions," announced Council member Mevith. "Our people are dying while we debate." "Perhaps," suggested Council member Vexahan quietly, "we should consider contacting the humans." The chamber fell silent. The idea that had been unthinkable a month ago was now being spoken aloud. But would the humans even listen? And what price would they demand for returning to save the galaxy that had thrown them away? 1 year after the human departure, the galaxy was dying. Council leader Zektar stood in his private office looking at reports that made his blood run cold. The numbers were worse than his worst nightmares. Billion credit trade routes had become pirate hunting grounds. Medical centers that once saved millions now watched helplessly as plagues spread. Mining operations that had fed entire sectors now sat silent and broken. His communication device buzzed with another emergency call. This time it was Governor Melkith from the Thraxian homeworld. The governor's face on the screen was gaunt and desperate. "Council leader, the plague has reached the capital city," Melkith said. "We have over 2 million infected. Our medical facilities are completely overwhelmed." Zektar closed his eyes. "What about the research teams trying to decode Dr. Lee's treatment files? They have been working for 12 months. They say they need at least 2 more years to break the encryption." "We do not have 2 years. At the current rate, half our population will be dead before then." After ending the call, Zektar walked to his window and looked out at the council city. Even here, at the center of galactic government, the decay was visible. Power grids failed regularly because the humans had designed the backup systems. Food shortages were becoming common because the agricultural worlds could not maintain their production without human-built equipment. The door to his office opened and council member Vexahan entered without being announced. The Zilorian looked like he had not slept in weeks. "Zektar, we need to talk," Vexahan said. "I just received reports from the Outer Rim. We have lost 17 more colonies to pirate raids this month. 17 entire colonies. Gone." Zektar sat down heavily in his chair. "How many refugees?" 300,000 displaced beings with nowhere to go. The pirate fleets are not just raiding anymore. They are conquering territory and setting up their own governments. We are losing control of the galaxy. On the industrial world of Korvar Prime, the great factories that had once produced starships and space stations stood empty and cold. Factory manager Drexelon walked through the silent assembly halls where thousands of workers used to build the components that held galactic civilization together. The quantum manufacturing systems had failed 6 months ago. The human-designed computers that controlled them had crashed and no one could restart them. Without those systems, the factories could not produce the advanced materials needed for starship construction. Drexelon's assistant, Kevmar, approached with another stack of cancellation orders. Sir, that is 15 more shipbuilding contracts canceled this week. The shipyards say they cannot complete orders without our quantum-forged hull plating. What about the emergency workarounds our engineers developed? Drexelon asked. Kevmar shook his head. The alternative materials are 30% weaker and cost 5 times as much to produce. Most customers are canceling their orders rather than accept inferior products. Drexelon looked around at the massive factory complex that employed 500,000 beings. Soon all of those workers would be unemployed. The ripple effect would destroy the planet's economy. On Nexus Prime Research Station, Dr. Valanesh had given up trying to understand human science. Instead, he spent his days writing reports explaining why the quantum communication project was impossible to complete. His latest report lay on his desk, filled with technical language that boiled down to a simple truth. Humans thought differently than any other species in the galaxy. Their science was built on concepts that alien minds could not grasp. Dr. Valanesh, his assistant called from across the laboratory, I have news from the Hegemony Science Council. Good news or bad news? Valanesh asked, though he already knew the answer. They are shutting down all quantum research projects. They say it is a waste of resources to continue without human expertise. Valanesh nodded sadly. The quantum communication breakthrough that could have connected the galaxy in real time was now officially dead. The knowledge existed somewhere in human space, but it might as well have been buried on a distant star dot in the depths of space. Captain Vexahan commanded what remained of the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. He had started the year with 6 ships, now he had 3. The others had been destroyed or captured by pirates who grew bolder every day. Captain, we have another distress call, reported his exhausted communications officer. Cargo convoy under attack in the Vega system. Vexahan looked at his tactical display. The convoy was 4 hours away. By the time his ships arrived, the attack would be over and the pirates would be gone. Just like the last 50 times. How many ships in the pirate fleet? He asked. Sensor readings indicate at least 12 vessels, sir. They appear to be using military-grade weapons. 12 ships against his 3. Vexahan realized with bitter clarity that he was not commanding a defense fleet anymore. He was running a rescue service, arriving too late to save anyone? Set course for Vega system, he ordered, knowing it was pointless. Maybe we can save some survivors. As his ships changed course, Vexahan thought about the human patrol records he had studied. Captain Lisa Bennett had commanded 40 ships that somehow prevented most attacks from happening at all. Her fleet had used predictive tactics and superior coordination to stay ahead of the pirates. Now those tactics were gone, along with the ships and crews that had made them work on Kepler Mining Station. The last alien workers were preparing to evacuate. Foreman Kralvek watched sadly as they loaded their personal belongings onto transport ships. The station that had once produced materials for 12 different systems was now a dead hulk floating in space. Foreman, the Corvan government is officially closing the station, announced Supervisor Velkrin. They say the repair costs are too high and the timeline is too long. Kralvek nodded. He had fought for months to keep the station running, but the truth was undeniable. Without Sophie Clark's expertise, the mining equipment was just expensive scrap metal. What about the workers? He asked. Some will find jobs on other stations. Most will return to their homeworlds. The mining jobs are disappearing everywhere. The humans took their knowledge with them. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, 47 desperate representatives gathered to discuss the unthinkable. The chamber that had once echoed with confident speeches about galactic prosperity now filled with reports of death and destruction. Council member Mevith stood at her podium with tears in her 4 eyes. My homeworld has lost 60% of its population to the plague. Our medical centers are failing. Our people are dying in the streets. Council member Thekvar rose from his seat. The industrial output of my sector has dropped by 80%. We cannot build new ships to replace the ones lost to pirates. We cannot maintain the ones we still have. One by one, the council members shared their horror stories. Worlds going dark as power systems failed. Colonies abandoned as they became too dangerous to defend. Medical disasters spreading across entire systems. Finally, Council Leader Zektar called for silence. The chamber grew quiet as all eyes turned to him. "Fellow council members," he said slowly, "we face the end of our civilization. In 1 year, we have lost more territory, more lives, and more capability than in the previous century of conflicts." He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. "I propose that we send a formal communication to human space. We must ask for their assistance." The chamber erupted in desperate voices. Some called it wisdom. Others called it humiliation. But beneath all the arguments, everyone knew the truth. Without the humans, the galaxy was doomed. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every corner of human space. Council Leader Zektar had spent 3 days writing it, choosing each word carefully. The pride of 47 species was being swallowed in a few paragraphs of desperate text. To the human colonial government and all human territories, the Galactic Council formally requests immediate assistance with critical medical, technical, and security emergencies affecting all member systems. We acknowledge past errors in judgment and offer full reinstatement of human membership with expanded rights and territory grants. Please respond at your earliest convenience. The message was sent with the highest priority codes. Every alien government held its breath, waiting for the response that could save their dying civilization. 3 days passed in silence. On the 4th day, a reply came back. It was brief, polite, and devastating. Message received and acknowledged. The human colonial government wishes the Galactic Council success in resolving their current difficulties. We have no additional comment at this time. That was all. No negotiation, no demands, no anger. Just polite acknowledgement and silence. Council Leader Zektar stared at the message for hours. He had expected the humans to bargain. He had prepared. Offers of territory, technology sharing, even formal apologies. But the humans had simply said no without explanation. The second message was longer and more desperate. It offered the humans complete control over 3 entire sectors, unlimited research funding, and a formal apology broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The human response came back in 2 days. "We appreciate the Council's generous offer, but must respectfully decline. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Still no negotiation. Still no demands." The humans were not interested in returning to the galaxy that had rejected them. The third message was sent by Council member Mevith, whose homeworld was dying from the plague. She poured her heart into a personal plea, describing the suffering of her people and begging for medical assistance. The human response was the same polite refusal. As months passed, the messages became increasingly frantic. The Council offered the humans anything they wanted: complete independence, galactic leadership positions, access to every alien technology. The humans could have ruled the galaxy if they had wanted to, but they did not want to. Each response was the same polite, distant acknowledgement. The humans had moved on. 2 years after the first message, Captain Vexahan received an unusual sensor reading while on patrol near the galactic rim. His remaining ship, the last survivor of what had once been a proud defense fleet, detected energy signatures unlike anything in the alien databases. "Captain, I am reading massive construction activity in the rim territories," reported his science officer. "The energy patterns are consistent with human technology, but far more advanced than anything we have seen before." Vexahan studied the readings with growing amazement. The humans were building something enormous out there in the dark space between galaxies. Multiple space stations, each larger than anything in Council space. Manufacturing complexes that dwarfed the great factories of Corvar Prime. How many people would it take to build something like this? He asked. "Based on the construction patterns, I estimate at least 50 million humans working in coordinated teams. They have been building for over 2 years. Vexahan realized with shock that the humans had not just left the galaxy. They had been planning something bigger all along. While the aliens begged them to return, the humans were creating an entirely new civilization beyond the rim, On Earth, now the capital of the human colonial government, President Kate Rogers read the latest reports from the Rim territories with satisfaction. The new colonies were thriving. Human technology, freed from the constraints of alien cooperation, had advanced faster in 2 years than in the previous 20. Dr. Alan Carter had finally completed his quantum communication network, connecting every human settlement across thousands of light years. Dr. Nancy Lee had developed medical technologies that made the old treatments look primitive. Engineer Sophie Clark had designed mining systems that could extract resources from dead stars. "Madam President," said her aide, Ben Walsh, "we have another message from the Galactic Council. This one is from Council Leader Zektar personally. He is offering to make humanity the senior species in the Council." Kate did not even look up from her reports. Standard response, Ben. Polite acknowledgement, no comment. "Yes, ma'am." Should I mention that our Deep Space Scouts report the Council has lost another 12 systems to various disasters this month? Kate considered this. The aliens were dying while humanity flourished. Part of her felt sorry for them. But a larger part remembered the contempt in their voices when they had called humans too aggressive, too destabilizing, too different. "No mention needed," she said finally. "Their problems are not our concern anymore." In the ruins of what had once been Nexus Prime Research Station, Dr. Valanesh sent his final report to the Council. The station was being abandoned. Without human expertise, it had become too dangerous to operate. His report was a confession of failure that applied to the entire galaxy. "We tried to replicate human innovations without understanding human thinking. We assumed their methods were just more complex versions of our own. We were wrong. Human science operates on principles that our minds cannot grasp. Without humans, we cannot maintain the technology that built our civilization." The report concluded with a statement that broke Dr. Valanesh's heart to write. Recommendation: accept that advanced technology is beyond our current capabilities. Return to pre-human technological levels until we can develop our own understanding over the next several centuries. Several centuries. That was how long it would take the aliens to rebuild what they had thrown away in a single moment of fear and pride on the bridge of humanity's newest exploration ship. The HCS Pioneer, Captain Lisa Bennett, watched her sensors detect signs of new alien colonies far from Council space. Scattered groups of refugees who had abandoned their dying worlds to search for new homes. "Captain, should we make contact?" asked her first officer, Lieutenant Dan Foster. Lisa thought about it for a moment. These aliens had nothing to do with the Council's decision. They were just survivors trying to build new lives, much like the humans had done. "Send a standard first contact message," she decided. "Let them know we are peaceful explorers. If they want to trade or share information, we are willing to talk." This was the human way. They held no grudges against innocent beings who had played no part in their exile. But they would never again make themselves dependent on the approval of others. In the depths of space, the two civilizations continued on their separate paths. The aliens struggled to survive with the remnants of technology they could no longer understand or maintain. The humans built new wonders among the stars, free from the limitations that others had tried to place on them. Sometimes alien deep space monitors would detect the energy signatures of human ships exploring distant galaxies. The humans had not just left Council space. They had left the galaxy entirely, seeking new frontiers among the stars. The final message from the Council came 5 years after the human departure. It was not a request for help or an offer of alliance. It was a simple statement of fact. The Galactic Council hereby acknowledges that the expulsion of humanity was an error that led to the collapse of galactic civilization. This message serves as a formal apology and a historical record of our mistake. The human response was the same. As always, message received and acknowledged. But this time, there was a small addition. The human colonial government wishes the people of the galaxy peace and prosperity in rebuilding their societies. It was a gesture of forgiveness, but not an offer to return. The humans had learned the most important lesson of all: Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to walk away and build something better. They had departed quietly, with dignity intact and their future in their own hands. And in that quiet departure they had found the freedom to become more than anyone had ever imagined possible.